The night, the oath, and the whisper in the dark. Picture this. A man kneels in silence. He wears white, with a crimson cross pressed over his heart, and the eyes of someone who's killed for God more times than he can count. Standing before him is another man with a sword, not to strike, but to speak. Words not meant for sunlight. Words not even the clergy dared to say aloud. Welcome to the Knights Templar, the order that, on paper, swore to protect Christian pilgrims, and off the record, they made vows that would make a medieval bishop vomit in his vestments. For centuries, their image was holy. Warrior monks, crusaders for Christ, martyrs of faith. But behind the relics and the legends was a pact sealed in silence and stitched with shadow. These were oaths whispered in crypts, laced with symbols that flirted with heresy, and enforced with loyalty that defied both Rome and reason. Today, we're cracking open the forbidden codex of Templar vows. Not the sanitized history you learned in school, but the gritty, blood-stained version whispered between clenched teeth by men who knew too much and lived too short. And trust me, by the end, you'll be laughing nervously, questioning everything, and wondering if your corporate NDA was inspired by 12th century fanatics in chainmail. So hit that follow button, drop a comment about what you'd swear to in secret, share this with a friend who loves conspiracy-laced history, and smash that like button before the Inquisition kicks down your door. Sworn to God, but whispering to darkness. Let's play a little game. Imagine you're in 12th century Jerusalem. The air stinks of sweat, incense, and boiling zealotry. The Holy Land isn't holy. It's a war zone wearing a halo. And in the middle of it all, a group of men wearing white tunics with blood-red crosses. Men who pray like monks but kill like mercenaries. Men who call themselves the poor fellow soldiers of Christ and of the Temple of Solomon. Catchy name, right? They would later be known simply as the Knights Templar, a name that would echo through history, like a cathedral bell struck during a thunderstorm. But while their legend was polished to a shine by Crusader myths and Vatican silence, the truth of their origins was messier, way messier. Founded in 1119 by a French knight named Hugues de Payens, the Templars were formed with a PR-friendly mission to protect Christian pilgrims on their dangerous journey to the Holy Land. Sounds noble, until you realize this noble mission also involved building fortresses, securing financial empires, and swearing oaths so secretive and strange they make modern cults look like after-school clubs. Let's start with the basics. The Templars took vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. Standard monk stuff. But unlike your average monastery filled with quiet prayer and bad wine, the Templars were a military order. Think Navy SEALs in monk robes. They lived communally, avoided personal wealth, and swore total loyalty to their Grand Master, who functioned as both a spiritual father and, let's be honest, a medieval CEO with divine job security. Now that's the surface. What most people didn't see, what they weren't allowed to see, were the rituals that bound these men to the order in ways that went far beyond faith. Recruits were subjected to initiations in dark rooms lit only by candlelight, surrounded by symbols no outsider understood. The ceremonies were intentionally mysterious, designed to disorient, to humble, to deconstruct a man's identity and rebuild him as a vessel of absolute obedience. How do we know this? Because centuries later, when the Templars were rounded up, tortured, and interrogated by the church they had once served, some of them sang like Gregorian canaries. According to confessions, many coerced under the sweet medieval delicacy known as the rack, new members were required to deny Christ, sometimes by spitting on the cross, kiss their initiator on the mouth, navel, and buttocks, swear allegiance to the order above all else, even God, engage in acts of ritual submission bordering on humiliation. Sounds totally Christian, right? The spitting on the cross, it wasn't just shocking, it was blasphemous to the bone. Defenders of the order claimed it was merely symbolic, a way to test obedience by having the initiate do something repulsive, like when your frat brother dares you to eat something disgusting for the Brotherhood. Only here, the Brotherhood controlled fleets, fortresses, and banking networks, so a bit higher stakes. Then there were the rumors of idol worship. A strange bearded head called Baphomet allegedly appeared in Templar rituals. Some claimed it had magical powers. Others believed it was a metaphor twisted by inquisitors desperate to link the order with heresy. The truth? Probably a mix of paranoia, political theater, and some actual unorthodox practices the Templars were too arrogant to hide properly. See? That's the thing. The Templars were powerful. Too powerful. And nothing makes a king or a pope more nervous than a secretive, independently wealthy military order with its own agenda and strange bedside rituals. Especially when said order is exempt from local laws, pays no taxes, and answers only to the pope. The secrecy became their doom. By the early 1300s, King Philip IV of France, deeply in debt to the Templars and craving their assets, launched a coordinated takedown. On Friday, October 13th, 1307, yes, the origin of that superstition, Templars across France were arrested. Torture did the rest. Confessions poured in, and the order was branded heretical, disbanded, burned. But here's the million souls question. Were the oaths real? Some say yes, and that the Templars have become a corrupted shadow of their original purpose. Others argue confessions were forced, the rituals exaggerated, and the whole scandal was a medieval smear campaign. Either way, the image of knights in white robes swearing dark oaths by candlelight stuck, and it still haunts us. Why? Because there's something deeply unsettling and fascinating about the idea of holy warriors swearing allegiance not to God, but to each other. Loyalty weaponized, obedience engineered, brotherhood that demands your soul and then hands you a sword. And let's be honest, if you had to swear loyalty today, blindfolded in a stone chamber with monks watching, how much would you really question what came next? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Would you spit on a cross for the greater good? Follow the channel, share this madness with your most heretical friend, and hit that like button like it's the Inquisition knocking on your door. Oaths in the shadows, the secret rituals of initiation. Let's kill the romance for a second. Everyone loves the image of Templar, gallant, divine, noble, sword in one hand, Bible in the other. But do you know what no one talks about? What it cost to become one. Because joining the Templars wasn't a simple sign-up sheet and handshake. It was a transformation, one carefully engineered to strip away not just your past, but yourself. You didn't just pledge allegiance. You surrendered your soul, piece by piece, under flickering torchlight, in stone chambers where no sunlight or sanity could reach. Here's how it worked. Step 1, the invitation. You couldn't just walk up to a Templar castle and say, "Hey, I love Jesus and swords. Let me in." No, you had to be invited. The knights watched. They tested. They whisper about your loyalty, your discipline, your willingness to forsake everything. Family, titles, lands, even identity. The perfect recruit? A younger son of nobility with no inheritance and a chip on his shoulder. Think of it as divine military recruitment meets elite psychological grooming. And once they decided you were worthy, the real game began. Step 2, the darkness. The ritual didn't take place in a chapel. It took place in a chamber that might as well have been designed by the set decorator for every horror movie dungeon you've ever seen. Cold stone, thick silence, no windows, no escape. You were blindfolded, led by silent knights through twisting hallways, your heart thudding against your ribs like a warning drum. Torches cast long shadows. Statues of saints watched you with empty eyes. At some point, you began to wonder if you were being initiated or prepared for sacrifice. Step 3, the renunciation. And then came the questions. Simple at first. Do you wish to serve the temple? Will you obey the master? But then, strange. Will you give up all your possessions? Will you abandon your past? Will you swear loyalty even above God and kin? In some accounts, the blindfold was only removed after the initiate agreed completely to surrender everything. Only then did they see the faces of the order, solemn, unblinking, dressed in the same robes they might die in. Step 4, the sacred kisses. Here comes the part no history teacher wants to explain. Multiple testimonies, again many under torture, but eerily consistent, described a bizarre sequence in which the initiate was instructed to kiss the initiating knight on the mouth, the navel, and the buttocks. supposedly as a sign of humility and obedience. Let's stop right there. Yes, medieval rituals were loaded with symbolic gestures. Yes, bodily submission was often used as a metaphor for spiritual surrender. But this sounds like hazing with a holy PR spin. And it didn't stop there. Step 5, the mental break. The whole ritual was designed to disorient, break down, rewire. It wasn't about embarrassment. It was about programming. By the end, the initiate had been cut off from everything they knew and reassembled into something new. Not a man, not a monk, not a knight, something else entirely. A Templar. And once you were in, you never left. Secrecy above all. Every initiate swore oaths of absolute secrecy. What happened in the chamber stayed in the chamber, or else. Some accounts describe threats of divine punishment. Others hint at more earthly enforcement. Either way, the message was clear. Break the oath, and your soul won't be the only thing that gets torched. The psychological warfare. These rituals weren't random. They were psychological warfare. A perfect blend of religious ecstasy, sensory deprivation, humiliation, and bonding. The modern term? Identity destruction and reformation. You weren't just joining a group. You were being reborn. No wonder the Templars became so feared. They weren't just organized. They were indoctrinated. So, cult or faithful? Was this a holy order or a militarized cult? It depends who you ask. To the church, the rituals were dangerous and blasphemous. To kings, they were threatening. But to Templars, they were sacred. They believed the rituals had to be intense, because their mission demanded it. These men weren't guarding monasteries. They were facing death daily, wielding swords in God's name, managing vast treasures, and protecting secrets that could bring down empires. You don't build that kind of loyalty with potlucks and prayer circles. What if it were you? Now let's play again. Imagine it's you. You've lost everything in a crusade. You're broken, and burning for purpose. A knight in white invites you into the temple. He promises power, purpose, brotherhood, and salvation. You agree. Next thing you know, you're in a cold room, blindfolded, half naked, swearing to serve something you barely understand. And when the blindfold comes off, the man across from you isn't smiling. He's watching, waiting to see if you break. Would you? Comment your answer below. Would you go through the ritual for power, redemption, or survival? Follow the channel. Share this with someone brave or gullible enough to join the temple, and crush that like button like a heretic hiding behind a false cross. When God wasn't watching, allegiances beyond the cross. The allegiance that even heaven wouldn't dare witness. Picture this. You're standing in a dark vault, deep beneath a Templar commandery. The air is still but heavy, like it's been waiting centuries to be disturbed. Around you, carved into stone, are strange symbols. Not Latin, not Hebrew, not anything you've ever seen in a church. In the center, an altar, not of gold or marble, but of blackened wood, stained by time and ritual. On it, a head, bearded, silent, watching, and kneeling before it is a knight of the Order of the Temple, muttering something that sounds like a prayer but feels like a pact. Welcome to the other side of the Templars, the Knights of Dual Allegiance. The official story is neat. The Knights Templar were the Pope's sword, sworn to defend Christianity at all costs. They took holy vows, carried sacred relics, and died by the thousands on sand-soaked battlefields in the name of Christ. But behind closed doors, another truth grew, one the church didn't write down but couldn't erase. Because the Templars weren't just fighting a physical war in the Holy Land. They were fighting a spiritual one inside themselves. And while their swords pointed east, their hearts sometimes drifted elsewhere, to other faiths, older gods, and maybe, just maybe, to knowledge that no cross could bless. The enigma of Baphomet. Let's talk about Baphomet, the name that burned dozens of knights alive. During the trials of the early 1300s, dozens of Templars confessed, under varying levels of medieval convincing, that they had seen, touched, or worshipped a mysterious head. Some said it was made of silver, others of wood or stone, always with a beard, sometimes glowing eyes, and always sacred. They called it Baphomet. To the Inquisition, this was open and shut Satanism. But the symbol is trickier than it seems. The word Baphomet might be a corruption of Muhammad, a distorted medieval reference to Muhammad, implying the Templars were infected by Islamic ideas during the Crusades. But others suggest something far deeper. That Baphomet was a symbol of hidden knowledge, a relic from pre-Christian traditions, a pagan remnant, a Gnostic puzzle, maybe even a metaphysical key passed in secret between initiates. Never written, only whispered. Whatever it was, it terrified the church, because it meant the Templars had another god, or at least another source of truth, the scrolls no one was meant to read. Throughout the Crusades, the Templars weren't just killing and dying. They were observing, learning, from Muslims, from Jews, from mystics, from philosophers who dare question everything, divine authority, the soul, the afterlife. And the Templars, despite being brutal warriors, were also brilliant administrators and thinkers. They built libraries, scriptoria. They collected scrolls, not just Bibles, but banned texts, Coptic Gospels, Hermetic writings, translations of ancient Greek works considered heretical. They weren't just guarding pilgrims, they were hoarding secrets. And the longer they stayed in the East, the more their worldview shifted. Their faith didn't die, it mutated. From Catholic dogma into something hybrid, elastic, mystical, dangerous. Rituals of the other doctrine. Templar rituals have always been shrouded in mystery, but some accounts, buried in Inquisition documents and later unearthed by historians, suggest disturbing deviations, chants in unknown languages, possibly borrowed from Eastern rites, reverence to relics that had no Christian origin, some even pre-Abrahamic, oaths that place the order above God and country, pledging obedience to the hidden light, a ritual denial of Christ, not as blasphemy, but as a symbolic rejection of blind authority. To a modern mind, these could be seen as acts of spiritual liberation. To a 14th century pope, they were a direct hotline to hell, the sacred brotherhood or secret cult. So, were the Templars heretics? Maybe, maybe not. But what's clear is this: their real allegiance wasn't just to God. It was to each other, to the order, and to whatever truths they believed they had found in the dust of Jerusalem, in the scrolls of scholars, and in the minds of men who dare to look beyond the veil. This wasn't just loyalty. It was initiation into a second faith, a hidden, encrypted belief system, coded in ritual, protected by blood, and guarded with the kind of silence that only the truly terrified can maintain. If it were you, now let's turn the torch your way. You've spent years watching men pray to a God who lets children starve and nights burn. You've seen holy men buy indulgences while calling others heretics. And one night, a Templar elder brings you into a vault, shows you a relic, tells you the truth you were never meant to know. He asks, do you want to keep living the lie, or do you want to serve the real light? What do you say? Would you kneel? Would you renounce? Would you trade a church for a secret that might damn your soul or free it? Let's hear it. Were the Templars enlightened rebels or corrupted knights? Drop your theories in the comments. Follow the channel. Send this to your conspiracy-loving cousin. And hit that like button before Baphomet winks at you in your sleep. The fire of faith. The Inquisition strikes back. The day the cross devoured its own. The knock came at dawn. It was quiet. Too quiet. Not the kind of silence that comes with morning prayers, but the kind that comes just before blood hits stone. Inside Templar commanderies across France, knights were still half-dressed, finishing their humble breakfast of bread and watered wine. Outside, armed soldiers waited for the signal, and when it came, they didn't wait for explanations. They broke in like wolves. And the knights, those who had faced Saracen blades, sieges, starvation, found themselves pinned by their own brothers in Christ. Friday, October 13th, 1307, the day the Holy War turned inward, the man who lit the match. Let's stop pretending this was about heresy. This was about King Philip IV of France, a monarch so deep in debt to the Templars, he might as well have been wearing a property of the temple tunic. Philip was ambitious, ruthless, and broke. He needed their gold, their land, their silence. So he went to the Pope Clement V, a man with a backbone made of wet parchment, and whispered poison into his ear. The Templars worship idols. They spit on the cross. They serve the devil. Clement hesitated. Philip did not. He issued sealed orders to be opened simultaneously across the country. The plan was surgical. Arrest every Templar on the same morning, seize their property, and erase their influence before they could mount a defense. A divine ambush. The fall, Templars were dragged from their beds, their sacred halls looted, their archives sealed, their relics, real or imagined, confiscated and vanished. Men who had bled for Christ were suddenly branded traitors to the faith. Some resisted. Most were stunned, betrayed not by infidels or pagans, but by the same church they had sworn to protect. Their crime? Too much power, too much wealth, too many secrets. They had become inconvenient. So the system did what systems do. It purged them. Torture as theology. The Inquisition didn't waste time. Templars were locked in dungeons, not the cartoon kind with cobwebs and rats, but real stone coffins where light and hope were equally forbidden. Then came the tools, the rack, the thumbscrews, the fire, the cord that tightens until your shoulders snap like twigs. And under this orchestra of pain, the confessions poured out. Yes, we spat on the cross. Yes, we kissed the secret places. Yes, we worshiped the head. Were they true? Maybe some, but most were desperate gasps from broken men who just wanted it to stop. And even when they recanted, it didn't matter. The machine was already rolling. The pyres. Trials were held, if you could call them that. The verdicts were pre-written. In Paris, 1310, 54 Templars were burned at the stake, publicly. No hoods, no mercy, just screaming men in white robes turning black with smoke, surrounded by the very people they once defended. And in 1314, the final blow. Jacques de Molay, last Grand Master of the Order, stood before Notre Dame. He had been tortured for years, humiliated, pressured to admit guilt, and yet, with fire licking the wood beneath his feet, he looked toward the cathedral and then to the sky, and he said, God knows who is wrong and has sinned. Soon a calamity will fall on those who have condemned us. He cursed the Pope, he cursed the king, and then the flames rose. 1 month later, Pope Clement V died. By year's end, so did King Philip IV. Call it coincidence, or call it the last miracle of a dying order. The silence that followed. After the flames, the world moved on. The church declared the matter closed. The Templar wealth was redistributed. The records were sealed. But something lingered. Not guilt, not justice. A vacuum. And into that vacuum rushed 1,000 theories, legends, lies. The Templars became shadows. Symbols. Warnings. If it were you, now imagine it. You've served faithfully. Given up your name. Fought for a faith that now calls you a heretic. You're in chains. The Inquisitor holds a crucifix in one hand and the branding iron in the other. He says, confess or burn. What do you say? Would you hold your oath or trade your soul for a moment of mercy? Would you scream the lie or die for the truth? Tell us in the comments. Would you break or burn? Follow the channel. Share this story with someone who thinks loyalty is easy. And hit that like button like a knight taking his last stand on sacred ground. If you were a Templar, imagine taking that oath today, or how to accidentally join a holy cult with corporate benefits. Close your eyes. It's not 2025 anymore. It's the 12th century. You're 22 years old, landless, broke, traumatized from your first pilgrimage, which looks suspiciously like a bloody siege. And the only thing you own is a rusted sword and the guilt of 3 questionable kills. You're angry, directionless, and you want meaning. Then someone says, you could join the Order. You laugh. You mean the Templars? They nod. The warriors of God. The knights who fear nothing. Who answer to no king. Who never pay taxes. You stop laughing. The invitation. A man in white, scarred and silent, leads you into a stone fortress. Inside, nothing but discipline. Every man moves like clockwork. No gold, no comfort, No ego. He says, you'll sleep on straw, eat in silence, obey without question. And if you die, your name will echo for eternity. You're hooked. He adds, but first the ritual. You hesitate. Too late. The doors close. The initiation, blindfolded, led down spiral stairs. The air changes, smells older, heavier. You feel walls with strange carvings. You hear chanting. You're dizzy. You start to sweat. They say, swear to give up everything. Swear to obey the master without question. Swear to defend the order even against the church. You say yes. Then comes the part no one warned you about. Spit on the cross. Kiss your brother in 3 places. Renounce your past name. Your body trembles. Your mind screams. But your mouth says, I do. Congratulations. You're not a knight. You're a weapon. Modern day parallels. Now wake up. You're in 2025 again. But doesn't that feel familiar? Let's translate. Giving up everything. Sign this NDA and forget your weekend plans. Blind obedience. We expect full availability, even on Sundays. Kissing the brotherhood. Company culture equals family. Denial of past identity. Please delete all prior social media. You represent us now. See? You didn't escape the Templars. You just rebranded them with PowerPoint slides and motivational posters. The deal you can't refuse. The Templars offered no salary, no vacations, no retirement plan, just glory, brotherhood, and maybe a holy death. Yet people beg to join. Why? Because humans will trade freedom for belonging, doubt for certainty, pain for a purpose. Sound like a cult? Now think about that job you stayed in too long, that relationship you couldn't question, that belief you inherited and never examined. Maybe the Templars weren't crazy. Maybe they were just a prototype for every loyalty system you've ever known. The dilemma. Now imagine this. You've been in the Order for 10 years. You've killed. You've obeyed. You've burned with pride. But one night, a brother shows you a scroll. Ancient. Forbidden. It says God isn't what you think. That the Order serves something else. That your vows bind you to power, not truth. He asks, will you keep obeying? Do you nod? Or do you run? Or worse, do you kneel again? Your turn. Drop your answer in the comments. Would you take that oath? Would you serve, resist, or rewrite the code? Follow the channel, tag someone who's in their own modern cult, and smash that like button like a Templar kicking open a heretic's front door. Medieval NDA. How Templar secrecy rivals corporate culture. From crosses to contracts, the brotherhood of bureaucracy lives on. Let's talk about loyalty. Not the poetic, I'll die for you kind. No, let's talk about the uncomfortable, silent, fine print loyalty. The kind that starts with a handshake and ends with you nodding at things that make your stomach turn. Templars had it. So, you just call it an NDA. Templar secrecy, the original non-disclosure agreement. The Templars didn't play around with silence. From the moment you entered the Order, you were bound not only by vows to God, but by a sacred and terrifying code of discretion. You were forbidden from revealing initiation rituals, describing the inner hierarchy, discussing internal theology, questioning orders out loud, breaking rank, even in death. And if you did talk, it wasn't a lawsuit you got. It was eternal damnation, excommunication, and sometimes a dagger between the ribs, if rumors are to be believed. Corporate culture, the new crusade. Fast forward 800 years. You're onboarding at a Fortune 500 company. A smiley HR rep hands you a stack of papers. One of them says, you agree not to disclose, discuss, or question the nature, structure, or purpose of internal operations. Sound familiar? You can't talk about your salary. You can't expose toxic managers. You can't question the mission. You must protect the brand. You represent the company at all times, even online. You've just been Templarized. Brotherhood versus, we're like a family here. The Templars called it the Brotherhood. Your boss calls it company culture. Either way, the translation is the same. Loyalty first, personal identity later. Templars shaved their heads and wore uniform robes. You wear branded hoodies and attend mandatory trust-building retreats. Templars marched into enemy territory with blind faith. You march into Q3 strategy meetings with even less information and way more caffeine. Psychological control. Same game, new language. Let's spell it out. Templar obedience wasn't just about swords and saints. It was about mental engineering. And that blueprint didn't disappear with the medieval smoke. It was just rebranded with office lighting and business jargon. When a Templar was told to obey the master, it echoed today's classic command. Respect the chain of command. No questions. No pushback. Just trust the hierarchy. Deny the flesh? In modern terms, maintain a professional appearance. No tattoos, no messy emotions, no personality unless it fits the brand. Silence at meals. Replace that with avoid gossip in break rooms. Because nothing kills morale like the truth being whispered between bites of microwave lasagna. Guard sacred knowledge. That's now comply with the confidentiality clause, Section 12B. Don't share the formula, the numbers, or the fact that your boss hasn't had an original idea since the Crusades. And finally, the Templar warning, punishment for betrayal. These days, it's called termination without notice. One breach, and you're gone with a polite HR smile and 0 references. Different words. Same control. The robes have changed, but the rules haven't. The consequences of speaking out. Templars who broke the code were hunted, tortured, and sometimes burned. Modern whistleblowers? Sued, blacklisted, discredited, moved to a different department. The mechanism changed. The message didn't. Speak and suffer. The power of strategic silence. Why did the Templars enforce silence so harshly? Because they knew that secrecy is power. The less the world knows, the more control the order holds. Modern corporations got the memo. From trade secrets to internal metrics, from product leaks to workplace scandals. Everything is protected not by honor, but by contracts. Sign loyalty in exchange for job security. You didn't join a faith. You joined a system. And systems survive through controlled ignorance. If you were a Templar, today, imagine this. You work at a massive company. You sign the contract. You follow the dress code. You know your place. But one day, you find something, a document, a recording, a truth that threatens the entire brand. Do you expose it? Or do you remember a clause on page 14 that says, you are not allowed to speak of this matter publicly, privately, or at all, ever. Now tell me, are you still a knight? Or just a loyal employee with a medieval job title? Comment below. What's the most Templar thing your job has ever done? Tag your office cult. Follow the channel, and like this video harder than a disgruntled knight slamming his resignation scroll onto the Grand Master's desk. Holy wars and unholy secrets. Why the Templars still haunt us. The ashes never settled. You wake up in a cold sweat. You're not in your bed. You're kneeling on stone. Candles flicker around you. A hooded figure approaches, holding a scroll in one hand and a dagger in the other. He speaks a language you don't recognize, but the meaning is clear. You know too much, or not enough. You blink, and suddenly you're back in your office, staring at a screen, your inbox full, your conscience heavier than usual. You tell yourself it was just a dream, but it wasn't. It was a memory. Not yours, but the world's. Because the Templars never left. The legacy of the unburied. When Jacques de Molay was burned at the stake in 1314, he didn't scream for mercy. He looked the king in the eye and cursed him. Cursed the Pope. Cursed the whole damn lie. And when both those men died within a year, just as he said they would, something shifted, not just in politics, in the collective memory. From that moment on, the Templars stopped being men and became myth, not the kind told at bedtime, the kind that lives in basements, in symbols, in whispers, in code words only the initiated understand. And that myth, it refuses to die, bound by fire, freed by silence. Most knightly orders dissolve into irrelevance after a few generations. But the Templars? They became more powerful after death than during their prime. Why? Because they were killed not for failing the church, but for knowing too much. for seeing behind the curtain, for understanding that the battle for the Holy Land was never about salvation. It was about systems of control, rituals as programming, oaths as data, belief as architecture. And once you understand the system, you either destroy it or become it. The Templars chose the latter. The echoes in today's world. Look around. You'll see them in government buildings where loyalty matters more than truth, in corporate towers where secrets are guarded like relics, in digital systems where knowledge is fire, and fire is forbidden. Templar DNA is everywhere. In the militarized chain of command, in elite inner circles, in the normalization of sacred lies to preserve greater power, in how we justify serving systems that no longer serve us. We didn't kill the Templar spirit. We franchised it. The ritual lives on. Every time you agree to something you don't believe in, just to keep your place. Every time you see the truth and stay silent. Every time you bury your doubt under duty, you're taking the oath. You're in the chamber again, blindfolded, and the dagger is still in the hand of someone who smiles too calmly. And what if you knew the whole truth? Let's imagine Forbidden Scroll survived. Let's say the head of Baphomet is real, and buried beneath a modern cathedral or corporate HQ, guarded by people in tailored suits who learn to trade the cross for a logo. Let's say the Templar Order didn't end. It just changed uniforms. Now ask yourself, if someone offered you access to that truth, would you read it? Would you swear to protect it? Or would you expose it and burn for it? Drop your final thoughts in the comments. Do you believe the Templars were erased or simply rebranded? Follow the channel, tag a Secret Society enthusiast, and hit that like button like a modern knight, slamming the seal of silence onto forbidden knowledge.